children's ministry and child rearing could be a little controversial.
I feel like children's ministry is such a big part of the larger church body.
Has there been a moment where something in children's ministry has impacted your boys in a way you hadn't expected?
Important it is for children to grow up with God.
I think the biggest thing that can happen in children's ministries is when a kid feels seen, known, and loved.
If I didn't have the church and the school and Sunlight in general, probably would have fallen apart a lot more.
Welcome back to the Disciple Standard Podcast. My name is Aaron. I'm a pastor here at Sunlight Community Church, and you could tell that we've got a bit of a different space now. We're preparing for VBS. We're recording, I guess, a week before VBS, or just a few days, and so we thought it'd be great to bring in Andy Bernard, the First Lady, onto the podcast again. Andy Bernard, welcome back. Andrea, for those of us who don't know. And she's running basically all of VBS. If you don't know, Vacation Bible School. It's for kids. It's about a week long. We'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, we have here a newcomer to the podcast. Her name's Kristen, and we were struggling, not too hard, but all of the nicknames that we were coming up with revolved around kindness. So it's now Kindness Kristen here.
I'll take it.
So welcome to the podcast. And of course, it's your anchor man, Aaron. I've learned to adopt that. I like that. I like that one. Okay, let's get started. Andy Bernard, First Lady, could you describe, just baseline, what is VBS? What's the history of VBS? Why do we do it? Tell us a little bit about it. Maybe we could splice some clips in and show some what's going on at VBS. What is it essentially?
So if I'm right, this should be number 20.
Wow.
Because we've been here 21 years, so this should be 20. So what happened was when we moved here almost 21 years ago, then there was like a very small church, pretty elderly congregation, about 50 people. And then I was a teacher before, so I was like, there is nothing for kids here at all. And whereas it was like 4 months old. And then the next year was like, okay, what are we going to do? We have to do something. We're working on children's ministries, getting some Sunday school classes started. And then basically it was a couple people, and we were like, you know what? We should really try Vacation Bible School to see how it goes. So we decided to try it. And then we had probably like 30, 40 kids. And it was Serengeti trek. We were in the African safari. And it was a lot of fun. And people had a great time. We had enough volunteers, amazingly. And so then we kept on going and we kept on going. And then, soon, about a year or two after that, I had another kid. So I had to take a big step back. And then there was other people who were running it and doing things. And then, but I was always like in the mix with it, like doing different things, I think when Rachel was a baby, that was my last one that I ran for a while. And that was a little stressful because she was like 8 months old and I had another 2.5-year-old. And then I was like, yeah, I can't keep doing this. Anyway, so that's the history of it. It just kind of got going, and then every year it'd get a little bigger, and then we were like, this is really fun. And so then here we are, number 20.
Yeah.
We're in Alaska, yay. And so, it's just a really, really fun week. And the best part about Vacation Bible School is the little relationships that get formed. We break the kids into small groups on purpose because we want them to get to know people and for them to be seen, for them to be heard, to be known. And so the role of the leader is really to get to know these kids, form these little relationships, have the little conversations. And so that's a really awesome part about Vacation Bible School. But the other really awesome part is it is the only event event, quotes, that we do at the church that the entire church
Yeah,
gets involved in.
that's huge.
From tech, worship, children's ministries, to all the pastors, to security. Like, everyone is involved, and it's just really fun to see the whole church body work together, and that's a huge blessing. It's really
Actually,
fun.
to build on that, so I don't know if you remember an old man named William Rebior. So this old guy, I mean, he might have been 200 years old. I don't remember, but he's a colonel. I came here at 16 years old, and I did not feel a part of this church. I was like, a bunch of old people. I'm like, what am I doing here? But this old guy, someone gave him a camera and said, William, you go take pictures. And he was like a colonel. He was like well-accomplished guy. He looked like, I mean, he was old. He was just an old, frail dude. He pulled me to the side and he said, Aaron, I think you should come take pictures with me. So he gave me like a little digital camera, and he had like the big camera, and that's where I learned. He taught me whatever he could teach me, and that's where I learned how to like love media, is because of this old dude. So like, anyone knows me, I was the media director here for some time. I was into social media marketing. I was into like websites. All of it was because of this old dude who pulled me to the side. I don't know if he had this, like, he thought I could be something. Maybe he just needed help. Who knows what he wanted for. But I like to think back to that story, I guess, in my life. So just because I'm like, anyone can pull someone in and get them involved in the church. And VBS is such a great way to do that with all different types of volunteers. I don't know, Kristen, what's your involvement in VBS over the years?
I believe that I was in not the first couple years, but I was probably when you took that step back. I think I was involved in one of those early years. I remember the theme being, it was like a bayou type theme.
Crocodile.
Yeah. And it was probably my first year working at the school. So that was 2008 it was just the preschool then. And somebody approached me and was like, we really need you to be a part of this. And it was the skits at the beginning. So I was like, okay. And so I happened to be a part of it then, doing that.
Yeah.
And during those years, the preschool was a big part of, they were a part of the VBS, where they went around and did the whole thing with them. So I was that also. So I was a crew leader with the preschool. And then over the years, I think I've done a little bit of everything. I've been up on stage.
Oh, you were a host one time, right?
Yeah. Yes.
A Bible buddy.
Like an action.
I've been up on stage. I've been a Bible buddy. I've been a crew leader. I've been a station leader.
Very good.
But sometimes I would just be a station leader with the preschool as well. So I mean, I've
How long have you been in the sunlight orbit here?
Since 2008. Wow. I started working at the school in 2008, and then started going to church here just by myself in 2008.
By yourself?
Yeah, just on my.
You were single.
Just even with my whole family moved up to Port St. Lucie, and they were all church hunting, and I was going to church with my family, but then I just kind of on my own just started to come to church here. We had to do one of those teacher commencement Sundays. And I just liked it. And so I just started to come here by myself on Sundays. And then it just kind of became home.
Yeah.
And it really is. It took off from there. And then so working at the preschool, I worked at the preschool from 2008 to 2017. And then I went to work in the public school and for a while, got married, had children, came back here, and and so now I'm back here at Sunlight again. And it's not just a preschool anymore. Now it's,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I was going to say an elementary school too, but it's not even just an elementary school. Now it's up through 10th grade.
Yeah,
So
yeah. There you go. So you went into the public school first. I remember this. You went to public school or after, and then you came back.
yes.
What was that transition like?
It was fine. I feel like I get along with and can fit in everywhere I go. So I've never had a problem with that. And I still went to church here.
Yeah.
And then even where before I sold my house, when I lived up close to Vero, I split my time between two churches.
Oh, really?
Because I still did children's ministry here.
Okay.
So I even for a little bit attended another church closer to home, and then every other week would still come and serve on children's ministry here.
So your ties here are really through children's ministry.
Yes.
Wow.
And the school.
And the school.
And the
And
school.
the school, for
yes.
sure.
Children's ministry in the school.
How have you seen God at work in your life over the course of, I don't know, what is it, 15, 16, 17 years? It's particularly through children's ministry or through Sunlight. I mean, just kind of in general, how have you seen God work in your life through this time?
Just God working just being a part of children's ministry in the school. I have seen so many families join the church, which has been amazing. Or just even coming to even just VBS over the years. Sometimes this is the only time they ever come to church and get that experience, or start out that way anyways, and then start coming to church as a result of that. And that's really neat to see. And then in my personal life, my life probably, if I didn't have the church and the school and Sunlight in general, probably would have fallen apart a lot more than it hasn't fallen apart. I have kept it together, but that's another podcast. So
Sure.
but
I could tell it's weighty for you, actually.
oh, great. Yes. It's been a roller coaster the last couple years, but my faith and my relationship with God and my support system between church and school and my family has been, it's great. And that's kind of why, I touched on that a little bit with Andrea last Sunday, which she shared with you, which it's just really cool. Just community in general. And
What's that? What's that particular?
How important it is for children to grow up with a solid foundation with God
Yeah.
and with other people who love God and know Him and just can trust Him, and then knowing and growing up with other people who want the best for them
Yeah.
and pray for them. And over the years, watching them grow, and even you with Evan, I see it, and Evan gets so excited to see you.
I love that guy.
And so
Your little boy's so fun.
just having that for my children means the world to me.
Yeah.
And so it's really important.
I can, before when you were talking about, I guess, the last 3 or 4 years of your life, I heard emotion in your voice. And just now, I heard conviction in your voice about how much the support system, with your permission, and Trinity, if you guys want to, we could cut this part out, no problem. I'm just more interested in you now. Could you tell me a little bit about like what God has taken you through, or maybe reflect, being discreet if you want or not? I mean, and we could edit all this out.
No, you can keep it.
But I want to know, where does that emotion and conviction come from? Because I think there's a lot of people who might be in the same situation.
Okay. Well, in 2017, I did get married, and we came to church. I just wanted that for my marriage.
I married you.
And you did. You were the person who married us.
Yep.
And it was great. And we had Trevor, and life was still wonderful. And then right after I had Evan in 2020, just things kind of started to fall apart. And my now ex-husband, he struggles with addictions, and so he kind of got lost in that again. And so our marriage ended. In between that, there was trying to work that out, trying to get the help before that ended, and but ultimately it did end. And being here every Sunday and having my kids here and having the support system for them.
Yeah.
And then even just for myself, being here on Sundays, and just not just on Sundays, but just having that relationship with God. God is who got me through it. And then just having everybody around me too has just really been.
What I'm hearing from you is that how God got you through it was surrounding you with trusted individuals that over the course of 15 years you've built these relationships with.
I mean, my entire adult life, pretty much the same. I mean, other people have joined that group for sure, but there have been some people who have been a part of that, who have seen it all.
Yeah, if I were
been there,
I'm sure there's a lot of people, but if who's the first person that comes to mind? Just give them a shout out.
Sarah Wilson. I can name quite a few of them.
I mean, praise God for these people.
Yes, right? Sarah Wilson Hyde, Ginger Booth, Christine Drucker, Nicole Spadaro.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, it's the school. Heather Cohen.
Yeah, of course.
Andrea, Pastor Scott, just everybody.
Yeah.
Just a lot. There's a lot of people.
If you were to talk to somebody, a parent who might relate with you a bit, what would you say?
That you're not alone. There's always going to be hard times. There's always going to be trials. But trust God. We're going to be learning that a lot in VBS this week.
Yeah.
It's all going to be okay.
That's interesting. You reverted back to something so basic that we learned. That's huge. That's huge. I mean,
it's as simple as that.
It's simple.
It's that simple.
Right.
And that's the kids can understand that, and that's what we want when they walk out of these doors after VBS. That I can trust God, and and as adults we can apply something as simple as that in our lives too.
Yeah, I even noticed in your faces, like, when I said someone who was relatable, like you felt emotion for them, right? Like it's like, like I know what you're going through, right? I guess to Andy Bernard and to you, Andy Bernard, what's your name, Andrea? I guess to the first lady and you.
Name.
To someone who is, I don't know, maybe spiritually overwhelmed or feeling isolated, how does children's ministry in particular play a role in their life?
So I think for some parents, it gives them like a little hour break where they can just go and like reconnect with God but I also see that, like for people who volunteer, like I think of like the nursery mamas who are in there together, and like they have conversations as they're holding babies and they're getting to know each other more. And I think that's really huge. I think, when you encourage parents, like, keep doing what you're doing, like it's really important what you're doing. I think that's really huge too. I don't know. What do you think, Kristen?
I'm just going to go off of that a little bit. Well, just by meeting there, then there's other opportunities to meet again, and then that can lead to plugging into a community group, and so they might not be as overwhelmed, or they might get together outside of church, and they build a relationship, and it's nice, and then then it becomes a friendship, and and that's nice. It's nice to not feel isolated and alone, because there are times with Evan. I say Evan because he's the high energy one, where I'm going to use you as an example. I'm always like, okay, Evan, afterwards. He practically tackles you every time he sees you.
It's gonna be a problem when he's older, for sure.
Well,
it's cool now.
Every time we walk away, I'm like, all right, you need to wait for him to see you first. You need to be gentle, because we talk about the fruit of the Spirit all the time. I'm like, gentleness, Evan. You have to wait. You can't just tackle somebody. Plus, he's talking to somebody. He has coffee in his hand. You might knock it down. What if it's hot? It might burn him. Look. I'm like, all these things. He's like, okay, Mom. I'm like, and then you're like, I love it. I'm like, okay.
Jesus afterwards said, let the children tackle. Okay, so that's what he said. It's the same thing.
But then, I'm in children's ministry, and then I'm waiting there, or I'm walking down the hallway, and then I see another mom that's kind of dealing with the same thing, and I'm just like, okay, it's reassuring, like, I'm not the only person going through that. So I'm like, okay, because sometimes you feel like, what am I doing wrong? What am I not doing? Why is this behavior not changing yet? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, how many times do I have to have that conversation about gentleness before it clicks or something like that? And so it is nice to know, you're not alone. And so
I heard a pastor
those type things.
I heard a pastor talk about it like this. Like, let's say the trouble of parenting. Like, parenting itself has its trouble. So Evan might act some way. My kids might act some kind of way. But then you've got the surface level problem, but it could be compounded when you're by yourself. So like, whatever the problem is, it's easier when you're with other people, and you could kind of talk through parenting or situations with other people. But it's compounded, and it's worse if you're just by yourself. Like, that's even worse. It makes the problem worse. And so I think that's what God does. He saves us to a body of believers, a family, a group of people who, can speak, can support us in those situations. And I think you've been supported by that. But I also think, what do you think about what I would see as your mission and calling now? Like, you talked about, like, looking at another mom who might feel the same way. Have you ever thought about, now this is your mission or commission or calling from God to kind of talk to these other moms?
Not until you just said something right now. I think I've always just kind of been like the teacher mindset, the not parent mindset, honestly, until you just mentioned that right now. I've always been kind of like on the, never thought like, hey.
What's your reaction right now? Talk me through what you're thinking through.
That would be nice, but I'm like thinking like that opportunity would be nice. It's just, I don't want it to sound like an excuse, but like having to find the time to do that too. And hopefully one day I will.
Yeah. Well, you could do it now. There are parents that come in every day to those doors.
Just in conversation, even doesn't have to be more than that. So just making an effort to have those conversations. I could do that. I could handle that. I could do that.
Nothing is by accident. Like, if you went through all this stuff, God is certainly with you. That didn't take God by surprise. And the people that God places in your life, whether professional or personal, that's not an accident either. It's just one of those things where, to me, it's very clear. Like, you're talking about it. Like, this is your ministry, whether there's a role or a title, or you just carry it out through your whole life. It's like I've heard a poem say it like this, like I feel like I'm walking through life with a backpack, and I collect stories or trinkets or lessons, and I put in my backpack. And depending on the lesson, sometimes it's heavier, sometimes it's lighter. And I like to share those things with other people as long as I go, and it gets lighter every time when I share it. So maybe as a form of like even ministering to yourself, or God ministering through you, through what you've gone through, it's helpful to do that to other people, or do that with other people, or reach out to other people. I reference this, I guess, often now I think about it. Excuse me. But like making friends and reaching out is intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. You know what I'm saying? That's why we have like a program, like a system to reach out to parents and kids over the years. First Lady, how's your views of children's ministry changed over the years? Especially now that you have grown daughters. You've mentioned that this is like 20 years old, VBS. What's your take on children's ministry, and how has it changed over the last 20 years?
So I think with children's ministries, like, we have a lot of fun. We have different fun things we do. But honestly, I feel like children's ministry is such a big part of the larger church body. So we teach them, we, do different things with them. We have fun things like Vacation Bible School. But honestly, I think the biggest thing that can happen in children's ministries is when a kid feels seen, known, and loved. When somebody says, "Hi, Trevor, good morning," give him a hug.
Yeah.
"Hi, Tegan, good morning," you give him a hug. And, honestly, a lot of my job is spreadsheets, unfortunately. And it's a lot of planning. It's a lot of like putting curriculum and lessons together and communicating. And sometimes that stuff wears me out because I wish I could get out of those weeds a little bit more, so I could just go hang out with kids. But then I'm like, if I don't do that, I'll be here till 10 o'clock at night. So, I think if we keep our focus on what's the main thing, and the main thing is for these kids to know that they're seen, known, and loved by us, and more importantly by Jesus, that's huge. And I know you talk about like every person needs like 5 points of contact in their life to really feel like they're part of the church. And I think that is true. I look back at my kids, children's ministries was a huge part of their life. We had Miss Jo, who was their Sunday school teacher for a lot of years, and she taught them a lot of stuff. But honestly, I think for them, it was more, they knew Miss Jo cared about them. And she was their Sunday school teacher. She had about 8 kids she teach every week, And so, I think there are people that are involved in children's ministries, and those are the people that are making such a huge difference. The Kristens, that when these kids see Miss Kristen, they know, oh, that's my teacher, Miss Kristen. They see like, my own kids are in children's ministry, as leaders now, like Rachel, like Rowan and Rachel have a cute little friendship. Like, it's so sweet, And so those kids, like this generation that's grown up in the church, my kids, they've had that experience of people who have loved them and poured into them. And now they get to do that. Yeah. And they get to, like Marissa sees, she's in the nursery, she loves the little ones. And so, she'll see a few of them and they run up and give her a hug, and she's like so excited to see them, and they feel so special. And that honestly is what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Kristen, have you have something to add?
Yeah, yes, I was going to touch on that because that last Sunday, I was talking to Andrea about that, and it was more with the school, but it's the same with children's ministry too, because the kids are building relationships with the leaders, and they're growing up, and then it can be a circle, and they can do the same thing. Marissa she was the very first VPK class that the school had. Okay. And Pastor Scott that year, pretty much every show that we had that year, the Christmas program, the Easter program, and the graduation songs that we had that year. He wrote them all. And so on the graduation song, one of the graduation songs, Marissa is actually singing it with him, and so they play the track. It's used every graduation ceremony since then, every single year. And so when you're listening to it every year, you hear Marissa on there. And now Marissa's one of the kindergarten teachers here at Sunlight. So this year, Evan graduated VPK. So I'm sitting out here in the audience and I'm listening to all the kids singing it. And then I'm hearing Marissa's little voice in the background. And I'm like, gosh, this is so cool. Yeah. And it gives me goosebumps. And so I'm thinking, Miss Christine, she is the one who practices with the kids and helps put on the graduation ceremonies. I'm like, we need to let these parents know this. Like, this is amazing. And I'm like, we need to let them know that that little voice that you hear on that track, some of your kids that are up here today are going to have her as your child's kindergarten teacher next year. She was 4 then, and now she's teaching kindergarten. Like, that is what this is all about. That's community. That's being a part of this mission, and that's cool. And we're seeing it we're seeing it with other kids that grew up in the church too. They're the director of the preschool. She was with children's ministry and youth here too, and just seeing. And now she's celebrated 10 years working and got a plaque for working 10 years. Yes, working. She got that yesterday. It's emotional. Mm-hmm. It's really cool. And then now, and I'm relating a lot to the school because it's a big part of my life too. So but I'm seeing this now. Like, I'm getting to where I'm getting up there in age enough to where I'm witnessing this happen before my eyes. And it is really cool to watch where your children are now building relationships with my children, and that's the case, because my boys love your girls, and so they get excited to see them and run and hug them, and so it comes full circle.
Well,
it's really neat to see.
It's what they're saying combined with like the credibility of what actually happened, right?
Yes.
Like you hear little Marissa saying, I'm growing up in God's world, right? Like,
you knew what song I was talking about.
Yeah, I'm growing up in God's world, like you are. And then now you know that she's a teacher teaching the same kids that we're now raising. It's crazy. It's something that is like a blessing from God, that if with commitment is only possible, like commitment to a church body, like stability, long lasting, that kind of. And no doubt over the last 15 years, people have gotten into big fights or disagreements or squabbles or whatever. But like, as a church, I think this, you might have me on my soapbox right now, but like, I feel like it's a major green flag when you have long-standing relationships with people. When you've known people and they're in your orbit for a very, very long time. That's a green flag. That's a wow. That's something huge. That's great. Red flag is like, oh, you have no long relationship, like no friends, or like you're best friends with someone you just met 6 months ago. Like, okay, like that doesn't make sense to me. That's like probably another podcast in it altogether. Mm-hmm. Kristen, has there been a moment where something in children's ministry has happened or impacted your boys in a way you hadn't expected?
They're still really young, so I feel like it's made more. I see the impact that it's making more than just navigating the last couple of years. But what I can say is, when we wake up every day, are we going to church or school today? And on the Sunday mornings that I say church, it's a lot easier to get going and getting ready than when I'm like school today. And it's the same place, but it's a little bit different.
Sure.
And so that I can see where the impact is a little bit different for them. Yeah. But I'm seeing the impact it's making.
Well, we were just got off this train of like, it's how much God has blessed us. But what do you guys say to parents who feel like it's too late or like they've missed the window with their kids? Like, oh, they're already too old, or I didn't stay with my church for 10 years, and that's great for you guys. Now you guys are like a clique. What do you say to those type of parents?
I don't think it's ever too late. I don't think God's going to be happy that whenever you make that decision to come back to church, to start reading the Bible again, to building relationships. So I'm going to say it's never too late. I grew up in church. My parents grew up in church, but they stopped going to church young. My grandparents are the ones so my grandparents kind of had me that every other weekend type schedule when I was growing up. And so on the weekends that my grandparents had me, that's when I went to church. And so I enjoyed church when I was young. And then of course my grandparents went to a church that really did not have anything. Well, they did have a children's church, but it's not like ours. And this was the 90s. It was a little different.
Old school.
Little different. And then, like I said, my parents, they didn't go to church. So I did not go to youth group. Was not involved in any kind of weekday ministry. And so I didn't have that growing up. So, my grandparents definitely planted a seed. And so as a young adult, and then definitely now as a parent, I mean, I have that for my children. So it's never too late.
Yeah.
Cause I made that decision for myself.
Very good.
So even though I had it and then I didn't, it's still, like I said, it was still there.
Yeah.
And then I ran with it
Yeah.
once I got to be a certain age.
Well, that's
wanted
faithful. That's faithful investing on your parents and grandparents' side, like people who was taking care of you, and then eventually, that was brought back to life later. How about you, First Lady?
I definitely don't think it's ever too late, but I think what makes people feel like this is their church family and that they're really growing is when they're seen, known, and loved. Like, there are people who go out of the way to say, how you doing? You doing okay? They talk to them, they get to know them. Some people don't want that, but a lot of people really do. And so, I guess this is going into youth land, but I feel like children's ministries, a lot of what we do is we plant a lot of seeds. So it's like sprinkling seeds. Trust Jesus.
Yeah.
Like all these little things we're like planting in their lives. And these kids, they have different things they're going through already, but it becomes times 30 or 100 when they are a middle schooler and a high schooler. And that's where those little seeds that have been planted, them being part of the church body, that's when it's really taken root.
Yeah.
And those roots are growing. And then once they have those roots are in their life, it's never gone. However, sometimes those seeds will get planted a little later in life.
Sure.
But they still can get planted.
That's right.
Their roots might be growing when they're 25 or 30, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It still can happen. And, it's our job to, sprinkle the seeds and be the light of Jesus. And it's God who's at work in their life too. But part of the roots growing is just that they know they have people who care about them.
Yeah. So, okay, we're talking about a lot about children's ministry, but any number of people listening might not be involved. What's one small thing that someone can do to serve children's ministry, even though they're not serving in children's ministry?
I mean, I honestly think, I try and make children's ministries as simple as possible for volunteers, where you can just show up and do your thing. And that's really what I want to provide. So, if anybody ever wanted to get involved, I promise you it's not hard. It's loud. I promise you that. It's sometimes messy. It's sometimes inconvenient. However, the little relationships you form with those kids and with the other leaders really is such an amazing blessing.
Yeah.
Like, it's another part of children's ministries for me because I do a lot of the back end stuff, and Sunday mornings I'm making sure we're all covered, we have enough people, and all those fun things. But we have a lot of teenagers who are involved in children's ministries, a lot. And it's really fun to watch those kids who have grown up, and like Trevor and Evan, when they're in middle school, high school, they will come back as volunteers.
Yeah.
And now they are able to pour into the next generation as well, and giving hugs and loves. And, I see that with my kids. So that for me is like, I love the kids. I adore all those kids, but I also get to have those relationships with the teenagers too.
Mm-hmm.
And I see them on Sunday morning. Hey, how's it going?
That's huge.
And honestly, for some of those kids that weren't involved in youth as much, that's like their connecting point.
Yeah.
And so that's been really fun too.
That's awesome.
And they are, for the most part, they're all kids who have grown up in the church.
Yeah. Very good. All right. I want to shift gears here. I have a couple. Children's ministry and child rearing could be a little controversial, especially in church. I have a couple questions here I want to get your opinions on. And if you are interested, if you're listening online, put the opinions down in the comments section below. Should parents be required to serve in children's ministry if kids benefit from it?
I don't think it's a requirement, personally. I don't know what you think, Kristen.
Well, I don't think it should be a requirement, but I definitely think that parents should try it and get, at least for a season, and it doesn't have to be, it could be in the nursery, it could be, on a weekday. I know it's harder during the weekdays, but, or it can't be over on Sunday mornings, but just to see. I know not everybody has a lot of patience for their own children, but you might have patience for other people's children. So for others' children. So yeah. I definitely think, it's worth giving it a shot, because it is rewarding, and it is worth building those relationships. I did it for, before becoming a parent. And so, I've stuck with it since becoming a parent. It's just, but it is just naturally a part of who I am. I think just working with children, and spreading, the gospel, sharing the gospel with children is one of the gifts God has given me. Yeah. So, I think I'm always going to be a part of children's ministry or working with children in some form. So, but I do encourage parents to get involved in some kind of way.
Well, I think I like what you said. It's still rewarding, like I find that when someone is, I guess Scott puts it like this, someone's a taker, right? They're the recipients of ministry. That's a blessing. That's pretty good. But real maturity in life, but even in faith, comes when you're a giver, when you start giving back in your time or your service or your talents or anything like that. And so, yeah, I think that becomes like the real reward and the real blessing from God when you start giving back. Now, I think our church is very lax on the requirements. There's not a lot of requirements around here. So thanks for your opinion.
I was going to say, there's a difference. There's two things that go on in children's ministries.
Okay.
There's Sunday morning, which is run by about 6 adults and about 40 teenagers. And then what happens on Monday nights at our weeknight, our kids' nights, that's a lot of moms, some dads are involved, and still a lot of teenagers. And so I see how, especially with GEMS, because I'm mostly with GEMS, I see like the connections that the moms make with each other. and then they make those connections in small groups with their girls too. And it's really like it's fun because like Miss Barbara was the GEMS leader this year.
Yeah.
She was so cute. And then her leader, and they became friends.
Yeah.
And then they had like 6 little girls, and they, you become like a little family, and you talk and you joke and you laugh through the year. And so I see that happen. This year I paired up 2 people in 5th grade as leaders. And honestly, God worked through that. In ways I never could have seen with the leaders. So it's not, you're making relationships with the kids, which is number one. And that's why we do GEMS, why we do CIA, for kids to have someone that sees them, knows them, that loves them, that can talk to them. They can share what's going on in their life. But I also see the relationships that form between the leaders, and then they have someone that also sees them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's some stuff you can put as many plans together as you want.
Yeah.
But it's God who's like working, and he's like putting this together, and then they're like, wow, this was such a blessing in my life. I didn't even know
Yeah.
what would happen
Yeah.
when I said I'll be a GEMS leader.
Yeah.
And then you like have your best friend for life through there.
I think that's what Kristen and I experience, right? With photography or with just involved in children's ministry in general. Yeah, absolutely. That's how we get to know other people, for sure. Another potential hot take. Is it better for kids to stay in main service with their parents or have a separate age-specific worship experience?
That is a hard one.
Okay. I'm old school.
Okay.
So I'm a little torn on this one because I do actually think kids should be in worship with their parents.
Okay.
However, what does that look like? And so I think a lot of times some of the modern worship songs don't really, I think sometimes, especially with the littles, now biggers not so much, but littles like preschool age, the half the time they're like smacking their sibling and they're like jumping on their parents and I don't know, I'm a little torn on the littles. I do think the bigger kids should be in worship with their parents.
What age is bigger? What are we talking about here?
What do you mean?
You're saying littles and biggers. I'm not sure.
Preschool and then elementary.
Okay, elementary. I got you. So like kindergarten.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm a little torn on it. I think what we provide for the kids is developmentally appropriate. I think the goal is at preschool, you do these kind of things. But what do you do with a 4-year-old, which is very concrete, very active based? A 5th grader, they're not like that. They want to talk. They want to discuss.
Yeah.
They have bigger thoughts.
Sure.
They have, they want to go deeper with things. So we try and like level it and keep things more developmentally appropriate. We break into small groups during Sunday mornings. The discussions you have with kindergartners are basically like, okay, who is in the Bible story today?
Yeah.
Like, how can we and a 5th grader is like, or a 4th grader is like, really like, okay, so what does that really mean? Like, you're talking about like Abraham and Isaac. He goes up and sacrifices his son. Like a little one's just like, okay, that's weird, but okay, And then a 4th grader is like, that's weird.
Yeah, yeah.
Like what was he doing?
Yeah.
So you level it, and so that's a lot of benefit of them going into kids' church is that you're meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
And you're able to make it development appropriate. I think kids sitting in a sermon, basically, if we were to have the kids in church, we would have to change our sermons a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it would go over their head
It's
a lot.
completely over their head.
Yeah.
And they would be lost. They'd be counting ceiling tiles.
They'd be acting out.
Some kids
a
can.
lot.
Oh yeah, they could act out. Yeah.
So it's not developmentally appropriate.
Maybe like coloring tools. I don't know.
They
like,
would.
Yeah.
Even for like the 5th graders who graduated kids ministry, they go into 6th grade and they're like, when can I start serving? Because they go to church. They're like, it's just
Boring.
So if we have them in the service, we have to make it a little more developmentally appropriate
Sure.
to where a 10-year-old is or a 7-year-old is.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge.
I'm not sure. I think I mean I agree with you about 99% of that. I just think there are there I've seen kids really really young, like the Lindsay Day and her boys, and anyone like what are they, like 9, 8, somewhere around there. They can really grasp onto some topics in sermons. I mean, so I mean, I agree with you, right? Like for the most part, most kids kind of just check out. I remember I was one of those kids, so I'm not a genius. Maybe those boys are geniuses. I was checked. Oh man, I was out. I was sleeping. I brought like little action figures in church. But I think there's also like another part of learning that's not rote information, but that's actual communal learning. Like this is why it's part of a community. I think I've said this on another podcast. It just bears weight to say it again. I feel like when you're in a community, you form a community identity and community memories. So like if I remember something, someone else, and I tell the story, someone else could bring in another perspective or even correct my perspective into a more sharper image of who I am. Now you could do that without them being in sermons, right? But I just remember one time when Tegan was really young, I was holding Tegan in my hand, and Kelsey, her mom, my wife, was worshiping, and she held her hand up, and Tegan looked at that, and she held her little hand up, and I was like, oh, like this is learned behavior, and now learned behavior turns into learned values, and learned values turns into learned ethics and learned identity, and so that's where I'm split like you. I'm split. Some kids yes, some kids no. I do see the value in both. Split.
Do I think they could children could sit in on or hang out during the worship part of a service? Sure.
Okay.
And sing and dance in the aisles and stuff like that, of course. But when it comes to actually sitting and listening to a sermon, I mean, it depends on the maturity of the child. And but I'm with Andrea. Like, if it's developmentally appropriate, I think they're going to understand it a little bit better, and they'll get more from it. And then there's going to be more opportunities to discuss it, where over here you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, right then.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where the small group comes in to play, where you just had the lesson, and then you dive into that and you can have the discussions. Whereas after service, when you're driving home in your car, if they remember it, great, and the family can, but they might not remember.
Andrea and I have been talking over the last year about uniting the children's lessons and the sermons on stage. Very hard, very difficult for a myriad of reasons we don't even want to get into. We sometimes at points of this year we crossed, and then sometimes we diverged or whatever. But I think that's a value. Like we're just trying our best to foster that conversation at home between the parents and the kids about faith. Like, it's okay to talk about church outside of church. You know what I'm saying? Like, this should be promoted, because we only see them 1 hour a week, if that. Maybe 2 if they come to kids night or whatever
during the week.
Yeah. So you guys put your comments and your opinions down below. We'll be sure to comment them. Last one, and I think I'll close on this. Has the church become too soft on parenting, avoiding hard conversations about discipline, priorities, and spiritual responsibility?
I'll let you take that one.
I don't know. Have we become too soft? Actually, when I look at our parents that we have, at least in the church side, they're doing a pretty phenomenal job.
Okay.
I really am very impressed.
Go parents.
I see that they are reading the Bible at home with their kids. They are praying. It is a big part of their life. It's very important in their family. They're helping put down roots.
Yeah.
They really are. I see it. Like, Kristen, as mom, as you're praying with your kids. Like, I don't know. I think they're doing a really great job. Parenting is really the most difficult thing you will ever do your entire life. There's no manual. Every child is so different with their needs. I have 3 girls. They are all so different from each other. So parenting one is not like parenting the other. However, at the end of the day, when you are pouring core values into your children, you are making faith a numero uno priority in their life.
A little Spanish there, huh?
Yes. Then you are going in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, later in life, your kids might veer off a little bit. They might. It can happen.
Yeah.
But they're always going to have that. They're always going to have those little seeds in them, the little seeds of faith. And, you know, God's going to water it. It just might not be when they're 12.
Yeah.
It might be when they're 30. But they're always going to come back, you know. And so just have faith, like really pour into your kids. The number one thing a parent can do is build a relationship with their kids.
Yeah.
Number one thing. You could, I'll say, cram God down their throat.
Yeah.
You could. Like, we're doing this. This is, you know. And those kids are like, no thanks.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a relationship with your kids, they know that you love them
Yeah.
and that you care so much for them and their faith with the Lord.
Yeah.
And it's a loving relationship and not a I'm cramming this down your throat kind of a thing. That's what it's about.
And we're going to screw up, right? Like as parents, I've screwed up multiple times, screw up all the time. But like, as long as that faith element is like God is working through my, you know, total mess ups, and then they'll veer off. I know I have, you know, but God brings me back because of years of faithfulness from my parents. It's a blessing that I have. It's a heritage of faith that I've received, and actually I think from you too.
And you know, you're like, oh, wow, God is really working. And you're like bringing God into your everyday life.
Yeah.
You know, like if somebody's struggling, you stop with your kids and like, let's pray for this person. Like, it's not, and also for kids too, it's not that they're just receiving all this fun, but they also are being taught to like think about others. And honestly, church, I see that with a lot of kids who grow up in the church. They've learned how to give back. And so they learn how to look for the needs of others. But anyway, I would just encourage parents, like, you know, first of all, love your kids. Just love them really, really well. That doesn't mean you're easy on them. Doesn't mean you let them do whatever they want to do. It means you discipline in love. Your kids know that you are doing this for their good.
Yeah.
So, honey, I don't want you to run across the road because I love you so much and I would like you to live.
Yeah.
You know, things
Yeah.
like, you know, of course you're not going to say it, but you're disciplining out of love, not out of fear. You're building relationships with your kids. Doesn't mean you let them do whatever they want to do. And that's the same way with faith.
Yeah.
It's like it's born out of a loving relationship with Jesus, who loves them so very much, and he wants them in his kingdom, so to say. You know?
Of course. Amen.
So I encourage parents, just keep up the good work. Make God so important in your household that those kids don't, you know, there's no questions there.
Yeah.
Well, no. And then there's the thing too. Plant the seeds. Later, they will have questions.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
That's all right.
It's dive into those questions.
Yep.
And that's very important to let them do that.
Kristen, what's your reaction to what?
Oh, I was just going to touch on discipline a little bit, and how in Hebrews it talks about how discipline is not always pleasant. And I'm just thinking about like how that's more for us, like, you know, because children are not always receptive to discipline. And it can be hard. And so I think that's more for us to reflect as a parent too. Like, you know, we have to be strong and we have to, you know, and so in those hard times, but at the end, like, we're going to see that, like, it's going, like, the result of it at the end.
Yeah.
So that just came to mind as Andrea was talking.
Yeah. Well, Miss Kristen, First Lady, Andrea, thanks for showing up on the DSP. God is certainly faithful to us, and he shows that he'll raise our kids, you know? He's got our kids, even though we mess up and screw up all these times, and he's got our church. Anyway, thanks for watching this episode of the Disciple Standard Podcast. Check out our bonus content on Patreon if you want to donate there. Support us getting another camera. And appreciate like, share, subscribe to this thing. And we'll see you in the next episode.
The future is now.